Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me at the conference. My presentation is going to cover the internationalization challenges of a post-Brexit world, and in particular looking at the University of St Andrews and our approach to managing internationalization. The things that I particularly want to cover are a very brief introduction to the UK and some of the HE challenges that Brexit presents. And then I will move on to talk about Global St Andrews, and hopefully we'll have time at the end for lots of discussion and questions. So first of all, the thing that I really want to stress is that Brexit is very much an ongoing process. It's not an event, and we have had a lot of uncertainty over the last few years since the vote in 2016. Not only about what our future relationship with the EU will look like, but when that will take place and how that will evolve and what it will mean for various sectors in the UK. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but I just put this up to show the timeline since the vote in June 2016. So at that point, just under 52% of the UK population voted to leave the EU. We're now at a stage where we're planning for the end of the transition period at the end of December 2020. But you can see that within the last 4 years, we've had a number of extensions, we've had a number of political changes, and a lot of discord in the UK about the approach that we're taking. So it's been quite a time of uncertainty and turmoil about the future relationship with the EU. The things that have been particularly challenging in that, as I mentioned, the timeline, it's now 4 years that we've been planning for Brexit and planning for the future state of our relationship with the EU. And at this point in October 2020, a lot still remains quite uncertain about our future relationship as the UK. And very much so the long-term impact of Brexit is really quite an unknown factor at this point. So institutions in the HE sector are really planning as much as they can, but with a lot of uncertainty still in place. It's worth just stressing that there is additional complexity, and you may be aware that across the UK, attitudes to Brexit were very different. So 62% of Scotland voted against Brexit. We then throw into that we have devolved governments in the UK and quite a lot of devolved issues, of which education is one, and Scottish referendum on independence, which adds to some of the complexity and uncertainty that we're in. And now, of course, we've got the impacts of the global pandemic to consider as well. So the key concerns that UK higher education has are really these 5 points on the screen now. And those are the ones that we have been stressing as a sector to the UK government over the last few years. So the first is around our reputation as a research collaborator of choice. The UK is one of the top beneficiaries of EU research funding and also one of the top collaborators within the EU. And so there is a lot of concern about both our reputation and also our continued access to funding that would support UK research excellence. There's also a lot of concern about the frameworks and the networks that we currently have to support student and staff mobility, particularly through Erasmus+, and how our continued engagement with those programmes will work. Another concern relates to how we recruit and retain EU staff and students, and then the general perception of the UK internationally. So I think the key concerns are really in two spheres. One is around the attractiveness of the UK and international perception towards it. And the other is around our access to frameworks and funding programmes that for the last few decades we have been a key part of, and which we're not clear whether we can continue to participate in at the moment. So within the UK, the Universities UK is the collective voice of around 139 UK universities. And I bring this slide up really just to show that as a sector, UK universities are as one in their position towards Brexit. So we've been very clear about our key requests to government that we need to have an immigration system that supports universities' ability to attract EU and global talent, that we need to be able to support international research collaboration, which was, as I mentioned, a key facet of UK internationalisation, that we need to be able to provide support to facilitate outward mobility of our students and staff, and that we remain open and welcoming to students from all over Europe. And then there's also an element of that request around supporting transnational education opportunities. And of course, the UK is one of the leading markets in the world for transnational education. So just very briefly then, at the current time, we now have a new points-based immigration system confirmed from January 2021. So there is a new student route, and this has at least provided some clarity for how European students will be able to come and study in the UK. We've also had confirmed that the fee and loan status for EU and EEA students will change for students starting a course from 2021-22. And while those changes have now, again, provided a lot of clarity, there's of course still a lot of uncertainty about what that will mean long term for our recruitment from European countries. In terms of Erasmus, we have at least the clarity that we can participate in the programme until the end of the current programme, and the UK has stressed its commitment to being involved in the successor programme, around which negotiations are, of course, ongoing. At the same time, we are also planning for the possibility that we won't be able to participate in Erasmus, and therefore there are plans in the UK for an alternative mobility scheme. In terms of research, we are continuing to lobby for full association for the next Horizon Europe. But again, the UK government has made some commitments around supporting research through UK mechanisms as well. So there are some developments on this side, but also still quite a bit of uncertainty about the future relationship in terms of research. So that was a brief introduction to the challenging political landscape that we're in. I now want to turn to St Andrews itself and to give you an overview of the university and also our approach to managing internationalisation. So St Andrews is a small university. We're on the east coast of Scotland, about an hour north of Edinburgh. We are a medieval city, so we have a pilgrimage site, an ancient cathedral that has drawn people from all over Europe since the Middle Ages. We have around 20,000 residents in the town, and the student population makes up a considerable part of that population. We've got a real sense of community and an extremely cosmopolitan town community to live in. And we're also quite famous for golf, which you may be aware of. This just gives you an indication of the size and scale of St Andrews. So at the front here is the medieval cathedral that I just mentioned, that drew the pilgrims to St Andrews. You can see at the back of the picture the old course and the magnificent West Sands beach, which stretches along quite a large section of that coast. But St Andrews itself, as you can see, is a very small and compact town, and the university really has grown up with the town and is fully integrated in the town itself. So the university is one of the 4 ancient Scottish universities. It's the 3rd oldest university in the UK after Oxford and Cambridge. It was founded in 1413. Today we have over 9,000 students from around 140 countries. And we're extremely international, with about 45% of our students and staff coming from outside the UK. So we are, in a real sense, an incredibly international community and university community. Just to give you an idea of our rankings, this diagram here shows our placing in both the Research Excellence Framework and the Teaching Excellence Framework that have taken place in the UK. So we are a university that really excels at teaching and student experience, and we're ranked extremely highly for that, but also incredibly highly for our research within the UK. So currently ranked second in the UK in the Guardian League tables, but in a strong position for both research and teaching. Our connections to Europe then are significant and long-standing. I mentioned that we were founded in 1413, and of course that's very much with a European foundation. So we have a long intellectual history and identity with our European neighbours. We have a lot of European staff and students on campus, and we have a lot of collaborations around the European continent. So over 80 plus Erasmus partnerships that we've nurtured over the last few decades. And currently around 50% of our student mobility is to European destinations. We're involved in a number of multilateral projects, both in terms of teaching through Erasmus Mundus and in terms of research projects and Horizon Europe projects. So Brexit is an interesting challenge and perhaps an opportunity. I think one of the key things that Brexit has really shown us is that our values and our relationships are absolutely critical, particularly in a context of uncertainty. And so Brexit has made us reaffirm our values and reaffirm our relationships, many of which we had for so many years and had worked so beautifully, but we hadn't actively reflected on why that was the case and why these were so important. So I think being able to have that opportunity to reaffirm the importance of our European connections has been incredibly valuable. So the four things I want to concentrate on here are how we have approached that identity question, preparing for Brexit in a very practical sense, celebrating our values, and how we see strengthening our relationships as being a critical element of our strategy. So very soon after the Brexit referendum, our Principal and Vice-Chancellor told our community and the wider world that we are outward-looking, international and European, and we will go on being so. And I think that statement is really evident across our website, across our publications and materials, and it's really about who we are as a European institution. So that identity factor is really important in bringing the communities together and emphasising that we are welcoming and very much consider ourselves an outward-looking institution. We have likewise been involved in various Scottish initiatives to demonstrate the welcoming nature of Scottish universities. And I just put up here a quote from one letter that was sent out in January 2020, which went from University Scotland, so our sector body in Scotland, the union, and also the National Union of Students in Scotland. And that just shows again the importance of values of the university and the importance of being open and welcoming to the EU. So that message was sent to EU students and staff in Scotland. In terms of really practical measures, we have done a lot to try and prepare for Brexit. So we have a help desk in the university for all staff and students, and a Brexit preparedness group which meets, I think, monthly throughout the last few years to prepare the university for a post-Brexit world. We have actively supported our EU staff and students who are seeking settled status in the UK, so to support their immigration status in the UK. We have been very active in engaging nationally with Scottish and UK government bodies, as well as lobbying together with University Scotland and Universities UK for the things that are really important for UK higher education to consider. And then we've been incredibly proactive in engaging with our European contacts, partners, alumni and stakeholders to reaffirm the value of those relationships. In the midst of all this, we put together our new university strategy for 2018 to 2023. And our strategy is divided into 4 thematic areas: world leading, diverse, global and entrepreneurial. And throughout that is a core social responsibility element, which is a really exciting thing to have in a university strategy document. And it's really at the heart of our strategy approach. I want to talk a little bit about Global St Andrews and how that relates to some of our thinking about our internationalisation. So we have a statement in Global St Andrews that's, again, just reiterating that sense of identity, that St Andrews is a Scottish university with a global orientation rooted in European traditions. So those European connections being incredibly important, again, in our thinking about the university's identity, history and position right now. So Global St Andrews aims to provide a welcoming gateway for the world to come to St Andrews, to develop the scale, quality and value of our international networks, to support opportunities globally for our students and staff, and to provide coordinated support and frameworks for staff leading on collaboration, research and curriculum development. In terms of a global welcome then, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key concerns that a lot of universities have in the context of Brexit is whether the UK will look opening and welcoming to a European student body in the future, as well as staff. And it's really, really important to us that we maintain our cosmopolitan identity, which is so critical to who we are as a university. So we are very much focused on continuing to attract European and international staff and students. It is important that they bring cultural diversity to our community, especially as we have 45% of our student body coming from outside the UK. That is such an important element of our student experience in St Andrews. We're in a small town, but with a very cosmopolitan student body. And I think that really helps to enhance the student experience that we have here on campus. That also helps to facilitate academic collaboration and hopefully to enhance our academic reputation around the world by showing that we are welcoming university for researchers and students. We are also very concerned about social responsibility, as I mentioned, and one of the recent initiatives that we have been able to take forward is a successful application to become a University of Sanctuary, which means that we have demonstrated our commitment to welcoming refugees and asylum seekers to the university, both as scholars and as students, and to really emphasising those values of diversity and inclusion, not just in the university, but in the wider community as well. So that's one example of what we've been working on in terms of a global welcome. We've also tried to make sure that international researchers are able to engage with us. So we want to be able to continue to welcome leading academics from around the world to St Andrews. And one way of doing that is that we've launched a new global fellowship scheme, which supports scholars from around the world to come and spend time with us in St Andrews to build relationships and hopefully to develop longer term collaborations. And this is just one example of a very successful global fellow visit that we've had in the recent past. The other thing that's really important, as I mentioned, in Global St Andrews is the quality, scale and the reach of our global networks and partnerships. And this has been a key focus for me over the last few years to build up the university's partnerships, both in Europe and more widely, and to consider how we more proactively engage in various networks around the world. This is very much in the context of potentially losing access to existing European frameworks, which have been so helpful to us in not only making the academic collaboration a lot easier through established multinational frameworks such as Horizon Europe and Erasmus, but these frameworks have also supported the organic development of partnerships. And we've really seen that, in my case with Erasmus over the last few decades, that something can start off as a very simple organic exchange and it builds into something much more multidimensional and strategic. And the frameworks that we have in Europe really support those. They also support student mobility and access to funding. And so with the potential loss of those, we have to be very much proactive, creative and intentional in thinking about how we engage with partners around the world and within Europe itself, and how we build much stronger partnerships and networks. So we have had an approach to review all of our faculty and institutional partnerships. I think it's been really important that we recognise the value of different types and levels of partnerships. So we're not seeking to do everything from a top-down approach. We really want to support the organic connections and allow those to develop and to be nurtured. But we also need to think about our strategic partnerships and how we consolidate those in the years to come. So we have in that context really focused on a small number of bilateral and multilateral relationships with a few key partners where we can really invest our commitment and resource to build multidimensional connections. Our thinking is that these type of links and these sort of multifaceted connections with other institutions and other networks provide valuable platforms for a much wider collaboration. Because they support academic research and collaboration, they allow us to share best practice with other institutions that are like-minded. They allow us to collaborate on common challenges, so being able to work with another institution on challenges that we are all facing in the current climate. They allow us to enhance our profile, influence and reputation around the world, and critically they allow us to provide opportunities for our staff and students. So we see these networks as being really valuable in building resilience against a variety of risks through strengthening our global presence and connectedness. Our strategic partnership with Bonn, which has already been mentioned in this conference, is something that we see as absolutely fundamental to all of this activity. So we have a long-standing partnership with Bonn, but the strategic partnership was agreed in 2018, building on all of those organic links that had happened in the many years preceding that. What's been wonderful about this relationship is that it's delivering on so many levels. So we have academic investment and involvement, we have professional involvement, and we have commitment of senior staff. We have a wide range of activities going on with Bonn, and we're really supporting each other, not just with research, but also with very concrete projects in relation to university governance and support and some of the challenges that we're both facing in the world right now. So we're collaborating on themes such as sustainability and really thinking about how we can use our partnership to consider what it means to be a sustainable university. We are absolutely committed to deepening and broadening that relationship, and we have put in place a governance framework to underpin the partnership. I think what's been really clear to me is that this relationship has been hugely successful because of the commitment and the enthusiasm from a wide range of stakeholders across the community. So our academic colleagues, our professional colleagues, and senior leadership. And it has also been brilliant at bringing together a wide range of projects over the last couple of years. But it also demonstrates the commitment that's required to a strategic partnership. And I think colleagues would probably agree that we have both invested quite a lot of time and effort into bringing this to fruition, which has been fantastic. But it does mean that you want to think about having just a few of these types of partnerships rather than a broad spread of them. Other things then that we have tried to do to increase both our partnership presence and our global opportunities. I don't want to spend too long on this, but to highlight a couple of examples of where we've tried to do this. So one is our global PhD framework programme. So this is designed to be able to strengthen our international research connections while at the same time supporting the growth and diversity of our PhD community in St Andrews, by allowing students to study with 2 supervisors at 2 different universities and benefit from the expertise of both and the expertise of very different national academic environments. So we see this as a real way to build up our research connections with other institutions and also really to support our own PhD community here in St Andrews. And that has been quite a successful scheme so far. The other aspect of our global opportunities is our commitment to growing and diversifying participation in study abroad. So we have for the last few years, like every UK university, lobbied for continued Erasmus Plus participation, but we are also preparing for a possible move to a UK only mobility scheme. We are very keen to support our students with study abroad and to make sure that we diversify participation in those types of programmes. So we have developed a lot of scholarship provision and a number of taster style programmes called First Abroad, which allow students a short-term period to try out study abroad and international education. I think it's so important that we think around our strategic partnerships, not only of the research connections, but also how we can support our student bodies to enhance their own academic experience and broaden their horizons as well. So in conclusion, the period since 2016 has had a lot of uncertainty for the future of the UK-EU relationship, and also, and in some ways more complex, Scotland-EU relationship. And that uncertainty has really been exacerbated by the pandemic over the last few months, which has shifted focus from plans nationally for Brexit. We know that Brexit will have various potential impacts on higher education, in addition to that attractiveness and reputation element, but also the frameworks that we currently have access to that support collaboration and funding of our research and our mobility. However, the long-term impacts are as yet quite unclear. So for St Andrews, we have tried to navigate managing both the immediate challenges and then also the long-term impacts and the uncertainty around that. It has been quite a challenge to reconcile Brexit with, and this goes across the sector, I would say, reconcile Brexit with the intrinsic values of academic cooperation and scholarship as being a beyond boundaries concept. But that has really encouraged us to reaffirm our commitment to cultural diversity and inclusion as an institution. And that is very much at the heart of our strategic approach, and one of the pillars of our university strategy is, of course, diversity. We are committed to building strong relationships and partnerships, and we see those as fundamental to internationalization, but also to building resilience on a global stage. So that is a key constituent part of our approach to internationalization and our strategy. And we will continue to value those relationships and partnerships and also our network engagement. And we see this as a way to also maximise our impact and influence within Europe and more widely across the world. And I think that's everything, but I'm very happy to take any questions at this point.